Welcome to week 5 of Unleash Yourself. And this week we are going to deep dive into what is considered our lower emotions. Now, what I mean by lower emotions is those emotions that are vibing at a lower frequency. Doesn't necessarily mean that they are bad emotions. It just means that they are more dense or heavy energetically. And so that's why they're considered lower emotions. So we're looking at anger, fear, and sadness. Now, when we're looking at anger, what we're doing is we're looking at what was the action that caused us to react in anger. So oftentimes, when we are reacting in anger, there are some culprits that are always kind of present. So physical pain, right? How many of us have stubbed our toe and we get pretty boisterous at the coffee table and we get pretty angry, but it's because we're actually experiencing physical pain to some degree, right? Or we bang our elbow on something, and it's like, oh, it's not very funny, and we get pretty angry about it, right? So physical pain often will result in anger. Our fears, right? Instead of us acknowledging the fear and sitting in a place of discomfort, we react in anger. An example of this is we're driving down the road, somebody cuts us off, and we slam on the brakes and we get pretty angry and pretty boisterous towards the driver. We get some pretty choice words towards them, and we kind of get angry and we stay in that anger for a couple minutes. Now, oftentimes this anger is actually coming from a place of fear. We are actually hiding the fact that we are fearful of getting in a car accident, or we are fearful of getting hurt to some degree, and so we react in anger, right? So a lot of times anger is a reaction to something, including our sadness. So we as humans are very, very good at repressing our sadness, avoiding our sadness, not looking at it, and we react in anger because of us not dealing with it. Most times we do not want to experience our sadness. We do not want to actually feel it. And so we avoid it, and in avoiding it, we end up being angry about it. So that's where anger kind of sits in. When it comes to us doing this week on sadness, a lot of times we don't have to really unpack our sadness. It's not a result of a reaction. It is a situation has occurred, an experience has occurred, and we are feeling sad. So we actually want to acknowledge it. We want to experience it. We want to let the sadness work its way through the body, right? When we repress it and we don't deal with it, we actually trap it in different aspects of the body. So we actually have to let the sadness run its course, so that way it can energetically move through the body. Otherwise, we trap it. So that's going to be what we're really focusing on this week with the sadness, is allowing that sadness to just move through us and, move on. Because when we repress it and we avoid it, this is why it keeps coming up. This is why, we keep feeling it, is because we're not allowing it to move. So that's going to be the hard lesson with sadness, is actually letting it move through the body. So when we get to our fears, however, so fears are an interesting subject matter. So there are fears like a fear of snakes or spiders or small spaces or heights. And, there's lots of different fears. We also have fears of, fears of things that happen out in the world. A lot of times people get fearful that their kids are going to get hurt, or, they fear human trafficking or any of those types of things. They fear homelessness and they don't ever want to become homeless. And, so sometimes we have these fears and we don't acknowledge them. So we want to acknowledge them, we want to write them down. Once we have the list of fears, then we want to actually look at it and be, okay, is this a realistic fear? Is this a legit one? Or is this a learned program? So oftentimes we have these fears that are installed in us from when we were a child. and they're not real fears. Like, there's really no reason for us to be afraid of snakes, for example. You know, we never have touched a snake, we've never been in contact with a snake, we've never been bit by a snake. You know, we don't have any realistic reason to actually have a fear of snakes. So sometimes it is programmed in. We'll use our parents, for example. The parent might say, oh, danger, don't touch. And when you're a child and you hear danger, you associate it with something bad, something fearful. And so then we avoid the snake and we get a natural fear to it. But it is a programmed fear. So we want to look at it and see what that is. Now there's natural fears as well. So if you're walking through the forest and, you know, all of a sudden there's a black bear there, well, that is going to spark a natural fear. That's going to bring in your fight or flight response, right? You're going to decide in that moment, you know, what you're going to do. And we need those natural fears. We need that fight or flight because it is what makes our instincts more in tune. It makes us actually aware of our surroundings. And so these are called natural fears, right? Where it is a fear that is developed in the situation. So there's also those types of fears. So spend some time, unwrap your anger, right? Get to the core. What is the action that caused you to react in anger? That's what we're looking at, right? Anger is always a reaction. And then sit in that sadness and let that sadness move through your body. And then create that list of fears, because we're going to need that list for some lessons down the road. So we might as well actually unpack what our fears are and start determining, are they legit or are they programs? So if they're programs, that means we can change programs. So as always, if you have questions, concerns, you need some clarity, always reach out. If you have any realizations and you want to share, please do. Otherwise, I look forward to seeing you in week 6.